In the city of Glasgow, a place known for its rich culture, resilient communities, and long industrial history, a disturbing story remained buried for decades. A story about trust, about vulnerable children placed into care, and about the people who were supposed to protect them. Instead, those children say they were trapped in a nightmare. This is the story of Douglas and Barbara Daniel, and the foster home that hid years of cruelty behind closed doors. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, foster care systems across the United Kingdom were meant to offer safety to children facing danger in their own homes. Emergency placements were often arranged quickly. Children who had already experienced instability, neglect, or trauma were placed with foster parents who were expected to provide safety, compassion, and stability. One of those homes belonged to Douglas Daniel and his wife, Barbara. To social services, they appeared to be experienced foster carers. Over time, they would take in around 100 children. But years later, a shocking truth would emerge. The Daniels lived in the Parkhead area of Glasgow. Between 1986 and 1991, several foster children would pass through their home. The children ranged in age from just 4 years old to teenagers. They arrived already vulnerable, seeking protection. But according to testimony later heard in court, what they encountered was something entirely different. Decades later, 6 of those children would finally come forward. Their allegations described a pattern of cruel and degrading treatment. In court, victims described being humiliated and abused by the couple entrusted with their care. Some children said they were forced into an animal pen. Another child testified they were ordered to bathe in a bird bath outside. One victim told the court they were forced to eat a cow's tongue as punishment. Others said they were denied food. One girl claimed she was so hungry, she ended up eating food off the kitchen floor. For the children who lived there, the house was not a refuge. It was a place of fear. In January, decades after the alleged abuse took place, the case finally reached the courts. At Glasgow Sheriff Court, Douglas Daniel and his wife Barbara faced multiple charges. By that time, the couple were elderly. Douglas Daniel was 77 years old. Barbara Daniel was 76. But the court heard detailed testimony about the treatment of 6 children who had lived in their home. After hearing the evidence, the jury delivered its verdict. The Daniels were found guilty of 6 charges of cruel and unnatural treatment of children. As the case unfolded, another startling detail came to light. Douglas Daniel was not just a foster parent. He was also connected to one of Glasgow's most notorious criminal families. He was the older brother of Jamie Daniel. Police believed Jamie Daniel had led an organized crime group involved in drug trafficking and violence across the city. Jamie Daniel died in 2016 after battling cancer. But investigators say his criminal reputation had long cast a shadow over parts of Glasgow. And yet, despite these connections, Douglas Daniel had been approved to foster children. Documents later revealed something even more troubling. When Douglas Daniel was approved as a foster parent in 1986, he already had 26 criminal convictions. These included offenses such as housebreaking and car theft. The question quickly emerged: how had someone with such a history been allowed to care for vulnerable children? The approval process that placed dozens of children in that home began to face serious scrutiny. One victim, now a 47-year-old man, told jurors about the dynamic inside the house. According to his testimony, Barbara Daniel was seen as the dominant figure, the boss of the household. Douglas, he said, was physically intimidating, a man the children feared. Victims described emotional, psychological, and physical abuse. and many said the experiences shaped the rest of their lives. When it came time for sentencing, Sheriff Louise Errol addressed the courtroom. She told the couple, "You robbed them of their childhood." She continued, "You were in a position of trust, apparently safeguarding vulnerable children. But instead," she said, "their behavior had been cruel, degrading, and humiliating." The court sentenced Douglas and Barbara Daniel to 30 months in prison. For the victims, it was a moment decades in the making, but the case raised serious questions about the system meant to protect children. Documents later revealed that allegations about the Daniels were known to social services as early as 1999. Some victims believed the authorities failed them. One former foster child told investigators the situation represented a severe failure in the foster care system. How had warnings been missed? How had vulnerable children continued to be placed there? Those questions remain deeply troubling. For many victims, the damage caused by childhood abuse can last a lifetime. Sheriff Errol acknowledged this during sentencing. She told the court that the lifelong impact on the victims was impossible to fully measure. These children had needed love. They had needed safety. Instead, they endured humiliation and fear. Even decades later, the emotional scars remain. Following the conviction, Glasgow City Council issued a public statement. The council apologized to anyone who had experienced abuse while in local authority care. Officials said safeguarding systems today are significantly stronger than they were during the 1980s and 1990s. They stated that modern foster care approval now includes more rigorous checks and oversight. But for those who lived through the experience, improvements decades later cannot erase what happened. For years, the truth about the Daniels foster home remained hidden. The children who suffered there carried those memories into adulthood. Many stayed silent for decades, until finally they spoke. Their testimony exposed a dark chapter in the history of foster care, and their courage brought justice, even if it arrived far too late. Because sometimes, the most dangerous crimes are not committed in the shadows of the street, but behind the closed doors of a home that was supposed to be safe.